This year I've been really spoiled. Usually it's just kind of, they come, we have dinner, but this year, my kids have just kind of gone all out and Mark, and so I've really been spoiled. So, anyway, let's get to it. Psalms 107. I don't hear any rustling of pages. Okay, or any phones. Psalm 107. We talked about how great his name is. Now we're going to talk about his loving kindness. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His loving kindness lasts forever. Let the people who have been saved say so. Have you been saved? Say so. Say so. You been saved? Yay. Y'all. Do you guys need some more coffee? I can make some downstairs. Yeah. Some traveled through the desert wastes. They did not find a way to the city where they could live. They were hungry and thirsty. Their souls became weak within. Then they cried out to the Lord in their suffering. He took them out of their sufferings. He led many by the straight path to a city where they could live. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness, his great works to the children of men. For he fills the thirsty soul, and he fills the hungry soul with good things. Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death. They suffered in prisons in iron chains because they had turned against the word of God. They hated what the Most High had to say to them. So he loaded them down with hard work. They fell, and there was no one to help them. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their suffering. He brought them out of the darkness and the shadow of death, and he broke their chains. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and his great works to the children of men. For he broke gates and brass and cut through walls of iron. Some were fools because of their wrongdoing. They had troubles because of their sin. They hated all kinds of food. They came near the gates of death. Then they cried out to the Lord in his trouble, and he saved them from their suffering. He sent his word and healed them, and he saved them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and his great works to the children of men. Let them give gifts of thanks and tell of his works with songs of joy. Some went out to the sea in ships to buy and sell in the great waters. They had seen what the Lord can do, and his great works on the sea. For he spoke and rose up a storm that lifted up the waves of the sea. They went up to the heavens and down to the deep. Their strength of heart left them in their danger. They could not walk straight, but went from side to side like a drunk man. They did not know what to do. Then they cried out to the Lord in trouble, and he took them out of their problems. He stopped the storm, and the waves of the sea became quiet. Then they were glad because the sea became quiet, and he led them to a safe place they wanted. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and his great works to the children of men. Let them honor him in the meeting of people and praise him in the meeting of leaders. He changes rivers into deserts and wells of water into thirsty ground. He changes a land of much fruit into salt waste because of sin of those who live in it. He changes a desert into a pool of water and makes water flow out of the dry ground. And he makes the hungry go there so they may build a city to live in. They plant seeds in the fields and plant grapevines and gather much fruit. He lets good come to them, and they become many in number. And he does not let the number of their cattle become less. This cracks me up. Okay, so he doesn't let the cattle go, but let's read on. When the number of the people become less, and they pour and put in shame under a bad power and terrible sorrow, he pours anger on the rulers. He makes them walk in the waste places where there is no path. But he lifts those in need out of the trouble. He makes their families grow like flocks. Those who are right see it and are glad. But all the sinful shut their mouths. Let the wise men think about these things. And he thinks about may they think about the loving kindness of the Lord. Yes. When I was reading this, it just reminded me how we still are today. How we still, do bad things, and we sin, and we get ourselves into trouble, and we cry out to the Lord. And what does he do? Takes us out of that trouble, not without consequence. There's always consequences for your actions. But he puts his loving kindness on us and in us. And so I would just like to share a couple of examples that we have went through with our children, and how God's loving kindness just shined through. But the first one, I have to tell you, it's pretty funny. When God gives us a command, he gives us a specific command. He said, I want you to do this. Just like he told these people, I want you to do that, but they hated it. But in this situation, our youngest, when she was kindergarten, first grade, she loved to be pretty. She liked ruffly dresses. She wanted her hair done. But she was a tomboy at the same time. So she would climb trees and beat up the boys, but she was pretty about it. So wearing her ruffly dresses. So because she did that in dress, her dad told her, don't let the boys see your underwear. And so, so don't let the boys see your underwear. And so he would tell her that. And so one night we're sitting there and we're watching a movie, and all three of the kids are on the floor, and they're all like this watching the movie. And Stephanie is kicking up her legs. And I said, Stephanie, where's your underwear? She very proudly, like she has got this down, turned around and said, Dad told me not to let the boys see my underwear, so I'm not wearing any. Yes, I have it down. Yes. And so I said, Dad, you need to redirect that. So she wore her pretty dresses with shorts under her dress, okay? Yes, Mom solved the problem. So, yes. So she did what her dad said, but she didn't really think about what Dad was trying to cover up. So yes. So that was our youngest. You'll hear a lot of stories about her. She was our little troublemaker. And I guess the youngest always is, I guess. And so she's crazy. And, God takes us to when we were first Christians, we were saved for a year, and then we became the youth pastors of the church that we were saved in. And Mark went and got his credentials, and then we became the pastors of the church. Well, not far into that, God had been leading me, wanting me to let go of my husband, my children, just let go. And so I said, oh, you can have my husband. Go right ahead. That was the easy one. Go ahead. And then it was my children, and these are my babies. You gave it to me. They're my babies. Well, it was easier to let go of my daughters than it was my only son. And so God had been dealing with me. 2 times he dealt with me. One, Curtis, he was 4, and we were in Bishop, California, we lived in Tonopah, Nevada, and our closest Kmart was 115 miles away. So we were there and we were shopping, and the kids wanted to play at the park, and so we were letting them play, and Curtis had to go to the bathroom. So I took him to the bathroom, and I'm waiting for him. He goes, Mommy, come here. I'm just like, okay, I'm going in the boys' room. Hope nobody else is in there. And he had pooped blood. And so I was freaking out, of course, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. So we went to the local hospital, and sure enough, it was blood, but he had some polyps that they were able to take out, and so he was fine. But they found a hernia, and that some little boys have because they're little boys, and when their things drop, well, sometimes they don't do it correctly. And so he had the surgery to fix the hernia and everything, and he wouldn't wake up. He was alive, but he wouldn't open his eyes. He wouldn't open his eyes, and I was like, Curtis, come on, you want to go home? And he just wouldn't. So Dan came and rebuked fear, and he woke up and he went to the bathroom, and we went home. The next day, he was jumping off the furniture instead of being still like a good little boy, but he's a boy, 4 years old. And so God was dealing with me, are you going to let him go yet? And so I'm just like, he's my only son. This is my only son. And so 3 years later, when he was 7, he stayed home from school, and he was in 2nd grade, and he stayed home from school, and I was nursing him. He had a fever, just generally wasn't feeling good, and so I kept him down and made sure he had lots of fluids and all that stuff a good mom does. And then it was time for me to go to Ladies Bible study, and so I said, Mark, will you keep him down? Don't let him run around like a crazy kid. Just, and so don't ever trust your husband when they say yes. No. Oh, he was fine. He's fine to me. Well, I got home and I went in to check on him, and he was burning up, like 105 fever. I put him in the tub in the warm peat water. Yeah. And it wasn't coming down. I gave him more Tylenol. It still wasn't coming down. So I called the emergency room that we had in Tonopah, and they said, bring him in. We'll help you get down the fever. So I said, okay. So I took him in, and we finally got his fever down to 101. He said, go, take him home. You have a 10 o'clock appointment in the morning to bring him to his regular doctor. So they did blood. They did all of that stuff. And all of the stuff, what was supposed to be good was bad, and what was bad was worse. And so I took him home, and every 30 minutes I woke him up and gave him some water. I slept on the floor by his bed, and so the next day at 10 o'clock we go to the doctor. They did more blood work, and it was worse. So they put him in the hospital. They thought he had rheumatic fever, and he was in quarantine and everything. You had to glove up and gown up and all that good stuff to go in, and yeah, and so we were there the second night we were there. His fever went from 99 to 106, like that. The nurses came running in, and they had some Valium. I said, is that for me? And they shoved me in the corner, and they started working on my son, who was just about in fever convulsions. And so I sat in the corner, and I'm just pleading with God, please, he's my only son, please. And God said, I gave my only son freely. What are you going to do? I opened my hand and let him go. God will deal with you. When he wants you to do something, he will. But let me tell you, I have seen this little boy fall where it should have broke his neck. He fell out of the back of our pickup truck on his head, on concrete, on asphalt, got a scratch. Not even a concussion. Yeah, not even a concussion, a little bitty scratch. The doctors were amazed. The We were visiting what they called him Grandpa Tom. They they were some friends of ours, and we were getting ready to leave, and the kids ran out, and the lady next door was a Mormon, and so we were able to. We went and I picked him up, and we ran in their house, and she's a nurse, and so she was just like, I don't see anything but a scratch. So we wanted to make sure he was okay. So we did take him to the doctor, and they go, he doesn't even have a concussion. He just has a little scratch. And I said, that's the power of God. That's when God stepped in and said, let's make him a witness. When he was in Iraq, even today, when he was in Iraq, it was a Sunday, and they were having chapel. And he had stepped out of the chapel and was about 100 feet away. A live grenade hit on one side of the chapel, bounced over the chapel, hit on the other side of the chapel, did not go off. They brought in the bomb squad to disarm it. It was live. But the power of God stepped in, God's loving kindness. He knew that this was my only son, and I was not ready to give him up. And so, and just things that have happened to him is just amazing. To our daughters, too. When Melissa was 17, that's the oldest, she was taking the youngest 50 miles away to Mark's mom and dad's, and she said she saw something black, and she swerved. She went down a 20-foot embankment.
She lost control and slid sideways off the road down into a head wall.
She was flown flight for life, unresponsive. We began to pray.
Little sister's arm with her head.
Yeah, we began to pray. She was unresponsive. That means bad, yeah. And so we got to the hospital. I was in a meeting, and Mark was in a marriage counseling session, and I was in a meeting at the place that I was working, and so I got the emergency phone call, and somebody came and got me, and I walked back in, and I said, please pray for my oldest daughter. She's being flew in unresponsive. And they're like, and so I left, and I was really calm, which was a miracle, because when it comes to my children, I am not calm. And then we drove down. We were airbound on intersections. It was really cool. But we got to the hospital, and there was this big long line of people waiting for information. I ran to the front of the line. I was rude. I was like, I don't care. I'm not usually not like that, but it's like, hey. And the girl was just looking at me. I said, my daughter's here. She was flown in. And so they led me the way. And this nurse, just because she was bigger than me, thought that I was not going in her room. I said, oh, no. Oh, no. And I pushed her out of my way and went in her room, and I touched her. And she goes, Mom, Mom. And that night, we took her home. Same night. The power of prayer. God's loving kindness shown to us time after time after time. And I'm sure you guys have stories too. God's loving kindness is just, sometimes it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And and he's always there, even when we make all of our mistakes and I'm not going to do that, or you still have to deal with me on that, and we're stubborn and we don't listen and everything. He's still there. We cry out to him, and he brings in his loving kindness and saves us. What an awesome God.
Amen. Amen.
Awesome God. And so, do you have my closing song?
Yeah,
So, you ask, how did you get through all this? God's loving kindness, number one. But because I knew who held tomorrow. I knew because Jesus lived, I could face tomorrow. I could once again pick myself up and go forward and be there with him. And he know that he has my back. He has your back.
Yes. Praise God.
Yes, in his loving kindness. So I love the altar. So if anything that I spoke about or we read about has maybe just pricked your heart a bit and you said, "Yes, I need help with that. Yes, I need to cry out to the Lord because I'm in a time of trouble." I would invite you to come forward as our closing, as our song, my theme song, "Because He Lives, I Can Face Tomorrow," plays, and I'll be happy to pray for you. Mark, will join me. We'll pray for you, and we'll just call down God's loving kindness.
God sent his son, they